The silence before thunder. The galaxy had moved on without them. 300 years had passed since the last human ship was seen sailing through the cosmic seas. 3 centuries of silence, where the name human became nothing more than a footnote in historical archives, a whisper in archaeological databases, a myth told to frighten unruly children. The Velaran Empire now ruled the core systems with their crystalline spires and energy-based technology. Their translucent forms dominated the Galactic Council, their voices carrying the weight of 1,000 conquered worlds. The Catharians, massive creatures of living metal and bone, controlled the resource-rich outer territories, their mining operations stripping entire planets bare. Between these two superpowers, dozens of smaller species existed in subservience, the insectoid Xathi working as engineers, the aquatic Mercilans serving as navigators, the diminutive Yoran functioning as data processors. All had forgotten the pale, fragile-looking beings who once walked among them, who once dared to challenge the natural order of the galaxy. Ambassador Thrain of the Velaran Empire stood on the observation deck of his flagship, the luminous Dawn, watching holographic displays that showed the Empire's vast domain. His crystalline form pulsed with a satisfied blue glow. The galaxy was at peace, or rather at order, exactly as it should be. But peace, like silence, has a way of breaking at the most unexpected moments. It started subtly. A mining outpost on the edge of Catharian space went dark. Communications ceased. When a patrol ship arrived 3 days later, they found the facility intact but empty. Every worker gone, every machine still running, meals half-eaten on tables. No signs of struggle, no bodies, just absence. Then it happened again. A Velaran research station studying ancient artifacts suddenly stopped transmitting. A trade convoy vanished without sending a distress call. An entire asteroid colony, home to 10,000 souls, became a ghost town overnight. The Galactic Council dismissed these incidents as pirate activity or technical failures. But Ambassador Thrain felt something stirring in his core, a vibration of unease he couldn't explain. He ordered his fleet to investigate. Deep in the archives of the Council Library, a junior researcher named Kira stumbled upon something peculiar. While cross-referencing disappearance patterns, she found an ancient file marked Terran Exodus. Opening it released a cascade of forgotten data. Humanity hadn't died out. They hadn't been conquered. They had chosen to leave. The record spoke of a great disagreement, a philosophical divide between humans and the emerging galactic powers, where the Velarans sought order through control and the Catharians pursued expansion through exploitation. Humans had advocated for something called individual sovereignty. When their voice was silenced in the council, they simply left. They took their colonies, their ships, their knowledge, and vanished into the uncharted regions beyond the galactic rim. "We will return when the galaxy remembers what it means to be free," their final message had read. Kira brought her findings to Ambassador Thrain, who dismissed them as irrelevant ancient history. But 3 days later, everything changed. Zephyrus Station, a major Velaran military installation, detected an unknown object approaching at impossible speeds. Before defensive systems could react, the object, a small, sleek vessel of unknown design, deposited something on the station's hull and disappeared. It was a message, burned into the metal in a dozen languages. "We remember." Within hours, similar messages appeared across the galaxy. On the hulls of warships, carved into the surfaces of moons, projected onto the atmospheres of planets. "We remember." Then came the attacks. They weren't random violence or senseless destruction. They were surgical strikes of impossible precision. A Catharian weapons depot exploded, but only after all personnel had been mysteriously evacuated. A Velaran prison complex lost power, allowing political prisoners to escape while guards remained unharmed. Slave markets were dismantled, their operators left bound but alive with evidence of their crimes transmitted to every news network. Ambassador Thrain convened an emergency session of the Galactic Council. "We are under attack by an unknown force," he declared, his form pulsing with agitation. A voice interrupted from the shadows of the chamber. "Not unknown. Forgotten." The figure stepped into the light. Bipedal, wearing armor that seemed to absorb light itself, face hidden behind a featureless helmet. "We are humanity, and we have returned." Before security could react, the figure vanished in a burst of quantum displacement, leaving behind only echoes of laughter and a simple message displayed on every screen in the chamber. "The silence is broken. The thunder begins." In the following weeks, the galaxy learned fear again. Human ships, faster, more agile, and technologically superior to anything seen before, struck at the foundations of both empires. They freed enslaved populations, exposed corruption, and dismantled systems of oppression with ruthless efficiency. But they killed only when necessary, and they always warned civilians before striking military targets. Their actions spoke of calculation, not vengeance, of purpose, not chaos. Ambassador Thrain, studying the patterns of attack, realized something that chilled his crystalline core. The humans weren't trying to conquer. They were trying to teach. Every strike demonstrated a weakness in the Empire's control. Every liberation showed the oppressed that resistance was possible. Every message left behind spoke of concepts long suppressed: freedom, equality, self-determination. The Veloran Empire and Catharian hegemony, for the first time in centuries, found themselves on the defensive. And somewhere in the void between stars, humanity watched and waited, preparing for the next phase of their return. The silence had been broken. Now came the storm. Ghosts in the void. Commander Elena Voss stood on the bridge of the Prometheus Rising, humanity's flagship, watching tactical displays that showed the chaos unfolding across the galaxy. 3 months had passed since their return, and the old powers were reeling. "Status report," she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of 3 centuries of preparation. Her first officer, Marcus Chen, manipulated the holographic interface. 17 systems liberated. "Commander, the Mercelan people have declared independence. The Xathi hive worlds are in open rebellion, and we've just received word. The Yorn have shut down all data processing centers serving the Veloran Empire." Elena allowed herself a small smile. Everything was proceeding as planned. The Phantom Fleet, as the galaxy had begun calling them, consisted of ships unlike anything seen before. Humanity hadn't been idle during their exile. They'd pushed the boundaries of science, developing quantum shift drives that made traditional FTL look primitive, shields that adapted to any weapon frequency, and AI systems that bordered on true consciousness. But their greatest weapon wasn't technological, it was ideological. In every system they liberated, they left behind more than just freedom. They left knowledge, teaching species how to govern themselves, how to resist oppression, how to build societies based on mutual respect rather than fear. The Veloran response was predictable. Admiral Korthax assembled the largest fleet in the Empire's history, 500 warships, each capable of devastating a planet. They set course for the Nexus cluster, where intelligence suggested the humans had established a base. It was a trap, of course. As the Veloran fleet emerged from hyperspace, they found themselves not facing a base, but surrounded by human ships that seemed to appear from nowhere. The Phantom Fleet had mastered the art of hiding in plain sight, using quantum cloaking technology that made them effectively invisible until they chose to be seen. The battle lasted less than an hour. Human ships danced through the Veloran formation, disabling weapons, crippling engines, but notably avoiding kill shots. When it was over, 500 Veloran warships drifted helplessly in space, their crews unharmed but humbled. Elena broadcast a message to the defeated fleet. "We could have destroyed you. We chose not to. Remember this mercy when you report to your masters." But mercy, Elena knew, was a luxury that couldn't last forever. In the depths of Catharian space, something darker was stirring. Unlike the Velorans who sought control through bureaucracy and law, the Catharians ruled through pure brutality. They began conscripting entire populations, turning peaceful worlds into fortress planets, preparing for total war. The human strategy had to adapt. Alina convened a war council aboard the Prometheus Rising. Representatives from liberated species attended via quantum communication, the first truly free assembly in 3 centuries. We cannot win through liberation alone, Alina explained. The Catharians are mobilizing for genocide. They'd rather destroy the galaxy than lose control of it. The Mercilin representative, her scales shimmering with bioluminescent patterns, spoke. What do you propose? It's time to reveal Project Prometheus. The room fell silent. Even among the human command staff, few knew the full scope of Prometheus. Deep in the uncharted regions where humanity had spent their exile, they hadn't just developed new technologies. They'd built something unprecedented, a mobile station the size of a moon, powered by an artificial star, capable of manufacturing entire fleets in days rather than years. But Prometheus was more than a shipyard. It was a symbol, a proof of what free peoples could achieve when unshackled from oppression. The Broken Ring, a massive Catharian military installation built from the remnants of a shattered planet, became the stage for humanity's greatest revelation. The Catharians had gathered their forces there, preparing for a final push to crush the rebellion. They never saw Prometheus coming. The battle began conventionally enough. Human ships engaged Catharian dreadnoughts while smaller craft darted between the larger vessels. But as the conflict intensified, space itself seemed to tear open. Prometheus emerged from a quantum tunnel, its arrival sending gravitational waves that disrupted every sensor in the system. The artificial star at its heart burned with impossible brightness, and from its manufacturing bays poured not just ships, but hope itself. The liberated species watched in awe as humanity unveiled their true strength. But Alina knew that raw power alone wouldn't win this war. As Catharian ships burned and their armies retreated, she prepared for the final phase of the plan. Because the greatest battle wouldn't be fought with weapons, but with ideas, and humanity had spent 3 centuries perfecting the most dangerous idea of all, that freedom was not just possible, but inevitable. The reckoning dawned. The siege of Velora Prime began not with explosions, but with silence. Every communication array, every data network, every quantum relay in the capital system simply stopped. The crystalline spires of the Veloran homeworld, usually pulsing with information streams, went dark. Alina Voss stood before the assembled fleet commanders, both human and allied species, in the war room of Prometheus. This is not a battle for conquest, she declared. This is an intervention. We're here to break chains, not forge new ones. The plan was audacious. Surround Velora Prime, cut it off completely from the rest of the Empire, and force the Galactic Council to face the truth of their rule without the ability to hide behind propaganda or military might. But the Catharians had other plans. High Chancellor Moravex of the Catharian hegemony had watched his forces crumble, his slave worlds rebel, his empire fracture. In desperation, he made a decision that would forever change the galaxy. He offered the Velorans a deal. Betray the location of the human command structure, and the Catharians would help crush the rebellion. The betrayal came during the 3rd day of the siege. A massive Catharian fleet, using stolen Veloran access codes, jumped directly into the heart of the human formation. For the first time since their return, humanity found itself genuinely surprised. But Alina had prepared for betrayal, if not this specific one. Execute Protocol Omega, she ordered. Across the human fleet, ships began to move in patterns that seemed random but were anything but. They formed geometric shapes in space, patterns that the Velorans recognized too late as ancient symbols of unity and defiance from humanity's earliest stellar civilizations. The patterns weren't just symbolic. They created a resonance field that interfered with both Veloran and Catharian technology, leveling the playing field in a way that made the battle rely on skill and courage rather than technological superiority. What followed was the largest space battle in recorded history. 3 fleets, human, Valoran and Catherian, clashed in a conflict that lit up the night side of Allura Prime like a second sun. But even as ships burned and died, Alina was executing the true plan. Small human craft, designed for stealth rather than combat, slipped through the chaos. They carried not weapons, but broadcasters, devices that would transmit the truth directly to every citizen of Allura Prime, bypassing all government controls. The broadcasts showed the reality of Valoran rule, the suppression of knowledge, the exploitation of lesser species, the concentration camps for dissidents. But they also showed something else. The world's humanity had liberated, now thriving in freedom and cooperation. As the truth spread, something unprecedented happened. The Valoran people, seeing reality for the first time in generations, began to resist their own government. Crystalline forms gathered in the streets, their bodies pulsing with colors of protest rather than compliance. The Galactic Council, trapped in their chambers by their own security protocols, watched their empire crumble not from external force, but from internal awakening. Chancellor Moravex, seeing his betrayal fail and his forces decimated, made one final desperate move. He activated an ancient weapon, a device that could destabilize stars, intending to destroy Allura Prime itself rather than see it free. This was the moment Alina had been waiting for. All ships, execute final gambit, she ordered. The human fleet, along with their allies, formed a precise formation around Allura Prime. Prometheus moved into position, its artificial star pulsing with increased intensity. Together, they created a shield unlike anything the galaxy had seen, not of energy or matter, but of coordinated gravitational fields. When Moravex activated his weapon, instead of destroying Allura Prime, the destabilization wave was caught, contained, and redirected. The backlash destroyed the Catherian flagship, and with it, the last symbol of the old order. In the aftermath, as debris settled and shields powered down, Alina broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. For 3 centuries, we prepared, not for vengeance, but for this moment. The age of empires is over. The age of cooperation begins. We return not as conquerors, but as equals. The choice now is yours. Join us in building a free galaxy, or fade into the history you try to erase. The response was overwhelming. Species across the galaxy, seeing the fall of both the Valoran Empire and Catherian hegemony, chose freedom. The Galactic Council was dissolved, replaced by a federation of free worlds where every species had an equal voice. But humanity's greatest surprise was yet to come. As the new federation took shape, Alina revealed the truth about the Terran exodus. Humanity hadn't just fled to preserve themselves. They'd left to prevent a war they saw coming. They'd spent 3 centuries not just advancing technology, but studying every species in the galaxy, learning how to free them without destroying them. The return hadn't been about revenge. It had been about redemption, not just for humanity, but for every species that had lost its way. 6 months after the Battle of Allura Prime, Alina stood in the newly constructed Federation Assembly, watching representatives from 100 free worlds debate and cooperate. The Velorans, humbled but not broken, worked alongside former slave species. Even some Catherians, after their civil war ended, joined the Federation. Humanity didn't rule this new galaxy. They simply participated in it, as equals among equals. Their technology was shared freely, their knowledge dispersed widely, their protection extended to all who sought peace. As Alina looked out at the assembly, she thought of the ancient message left behind during the Exodus. We will return when the galaxy remembers what it means to be free. The galaxy had remembered, and in remembering, it had been reborn. The age of empires was over. The age of unity had begun. And in the depths of space, human ships still patrolled, not as conquerors or overlords, but as guardians of the freedom they'd fought so hard to restore. Because humanity had learned the hardest lesson of all. Freedom isn't won once, but defended always. The thunder had passed. The dawn had come. And the galaxy would never be the same.